of this house and to those viewing and listening elsewhere. Our scripture for today comes from Acts chapter 4, verses 32 to 35. The group of believers was one in mind and heart. None of them said that any of their belongings were their own, but they all shared with one another everything they had. With great power, the apostles gave witness to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus, and God poured rich blessings on them all. There was no one in the group who was in need. Those who owned fields or houses would sell them and bring the money received from the sale and turn it over to the apostles. And the money was distributed according to the needs of the people. The spirit of generosity is alive and well in our country. Many people are going beyond the call of duty to support and encourage others. Blessings have flowed within our nation from well beyond our borders. There's always more that can be done, but we say thank God for what has happened and for what is happening. You, the members of this house, have been stretched to your perceived limits. You are finding new levels of vision making as you respond to the Dorian disaster. You are in the throes of birthing a new people. The Dorian disaster is fast becoming Dorian determination to overcome. Our post-Dorian destiny is being shaped by God in this place. As you pray, listen, watch, deliberate, and decide a way forward for us all. Just as we never before saw anything like this natural phenomenon, so it is that we are all called to create new approaches, strategies, and policies that will carry us over the top of this tragedy to a future that is God-dependent. Truly, we need the Lord to heal us, guide us, and restore us. May we each examine our attitude to possession, to sharing, to hospitality, to faith. We cannot rush our emergence from our economic and spiritual cocoon, but there is no going back to caterpillar existence when a glorious butterfly state awaits us. Let us persevere, praying together. Our Father, who art in heaven,
Hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power, and glory. Amen.
Good afternoon, honorable members. When the business of this House suspended on Thursday of last week, the honorable member for Kalani had reserved the floor. The chair now recognizes the honorable member for Kalani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. You could just give me a second. Let me take off my shoes. So that I can get as comfortable as possible. Speaker, I'm happy to stand this evening to wrap up this debate on the disaster preparedness bill. But before I start, Mr. Speaker, I want to remind my constituents in Killarney and do apologize for the amount of time I've not been there. They're accustomed to seeing me there in office at least twice a week in the past. Very good team there who were there every day and would take whatever information and complaints that one may have so that they would know who to call in the relevant ministries so that we can deal with the problems and issues as quickly as possible. And I've had a very interesting meeting just Sunday afternoon with the Southwest District Association The Speaker Kalani is designed in such a way that we have about 12 different associations covering all the different areas. And it's easier for me to meet with the association as opposed to general meetings because the issues that Lightfoot Key face or Westbridge face are completely different from the issues that are faced in the Gambier community. And we find it very rewarding to have it designed in such a manner. But I want to inform the residents of South Westridge that the concerns that they had expressed, I've spoken with my colleague minister here, and he has assured me that he as Minister of Works will take care of North Kalani, that the potholes that we have that have been breaking our rims will be repaired, and we would have our roads properly repaired. And I also want to inform those in Tropical Garden where I live that I've not ignored their concerns either. And my colleague again assured me that we would have new roads in Tropical Garden.
Yes.
So we look forward to that. But Mr. Speaker, the other issues that we face in Kalani, I want to assure them that those issues are being addressed. In Twin Lakes, we would have experienced some challenges with the water, but those are being worked out, and Twin Lakes can be assured that the infrastructure will be in place. And the basketball court, Mr. Speaker, I have a very good team between Ministry of Work and young members in Barnabas. I know we've discussed about the repair work at the basketball court in my park opposite Nesbitt. And to my amazement, I was driving home only to see that tractors were working. So that commenced without even informing me. But thank you very much. so we would have a new basketball court soon. And the challenges that we face at the seawall at Nesbitt, the seawall near Nesbitt where West Bay Street can be compromised by any severe surge or hurricane, that is being repaired. So, Mr. Speaker, I can assure my constituents that we are aware of their needs and we are addressing them one at a time. After all, if a prime minister can't take care of his own constituency, he has serious issues and problems. And I have very good cooperative colleagues who have been treating me well. So I thank them, Mr. Speaker. I thank them very much. But, Mr. Speaker, for the records, for the record of the House, I wish to begin again by congratulating and noting our fellow Bahamians who were recently appointed to various national honors. The new companions of the Order of the Bahamas are Reverend Philip Reming, the late Timothy Gibson, the late Dr. Hervis Bain. The new companions of the Order of Distinction are the Honorable Frank Watson, the Honorable O.A.T. Tommy Turnquist, and the new officers of the Order of Distinction are Mr. Keith Mason Sr. and Mr. Franklin O'Brien Rose. And the new members of the Order of Distinction are Dr. Diane Gail Saunders, Mrs. Missouri Sherman Peters, Mr. Godfrey Kenneth Kelly, Mr. Edward Andrew Dud Maynard, Mrs. Lynn Holovesco, and Mr. Norbert Reming. And the new companions of the Order of Merit, Mr. Speaker, are Reverend Dr. Charles Saunders, Bishop Carrington Samuel Poitier, the late Edmund Moxley, Pindham, my apologies, Bishop Carrington Samuel Pinder, the late Edmund Mosby, the late George Adams, and the new officer of the Order of Merit is Reverend Bishop J. Carl Renner. New members of the Order of Merit are Reverend Charles H. Speeding, Reverend Oral Rex Nathan. The Order of Lignum Vitae is awarded to Mrs. Renee Miller Weaver. Speaker, again, I congratulate those individuals who have made outstanding contributions to the growth and development of this country. Mr. Speaker, many in the country have listened with alarm, amusement, and sometimes with utter amazement at the opposition during this debate. The opposition is the party of could have, would have, and should have. They like to tell the country about what they could have, should have, or would have done if they were in government during Hurricane Dorian. Mr. Speaker, we do not have to live in the fantasy land and world or make believe of what the PLP would have done, or should have done, or could have done. The country has a record. We have a record, Mr. Speaker, of what they have done and also what they failed to do. The record speaks for itself. And during the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Dorian, the leader of the opposition drove through Pinewood Gardens in a truck with the PLP flag flying. The country saw a big grin on his face in a picture he took outside his truck. And that picture, Mr. Speaker, represents more than 1,000 words. The picture is a story all by itself, and the picture illustrates plenty. Pictures speak for themselves. But even worse than that cynical publicity stunt is what the PLP posed in this honorable House. The Speaker, as I noted in a previous communication to the House earlier this year, on April 8th, the government of the Bahamas signed an agreement for a $100 million contingent loan facility for natural disasters with the IDB. When our administration brought this matter to the House for approval, the PLP voted against this credit line, which will prove to be a lifeline for the country and the people of both Abaco and Grand Bahama. In another example of this reckless, angry, wild opposition to just about everything we propose, the PLP voted no to this credit facility, which we are able to quickly draw on after Hurricane Dorian. It's unfortunate that the member of Exuma is not sitting here. Because I want to remind the member of Exuma that Hurricane Irma struck Exuma in 2017. And it's sad that the member, a young member, who represents the future of the PLP, voted against this contingent loan. And Speaker, That fund was preparing for tomorrow in the event we are struck by some disaster and certain infrastructures are damaged or destroyed. We would have had such funds available for immediate repair, as opposed to going out into the open market and taking some longer length of time. What it meant, Mr. Speaker, if our docks were damaged, we could have dealt with it as quickly as possible because we would have had funds available. The member voted against it. So what he was telling the constituents of Exuma, that if your dock is damaged, you must wait like the rest of the world because we're not interested in repairing you right away. What he was saying is that the food that you would need transported to your dock to support you, we don't care. You must wait like everybody else. What he said is that the medication that's necessary to your hospital for care, you must wait like everybody else. But what he also said, Mr. Speaker, is if your airport is damaged, and we know that Exuma depends on its airport, its touristic product, etc., we don't care. We must wait like everybody else, wait in line for funds so that we can repair your airport. In the meantime, affect your economy, you must wait. So we voted no. And then your roads, Mr. Speaker, we have evidence of road damage. So if your roads are damaged, you must wait. Mr. Speaker,
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Angleston on the point of order.
Hopefully not. The Prime Minister has a very controversial beginning of his speech, so it might be long. We hope it's not, the Speaker. But the Speaker, I think that the Prime Minister, the member for Kalani, is seeking to cast the decision taken by the member for Exuma and by extension the rest of us is because that there is a sense that we are not caring, that we want them to suffer and wait. I think that the member, first of all, is mischaracterizing the position, number one. And secondly, this fund that is supposed to be so immediate, we are now going to the second month. We don't see the effect of it yet. In fact, Mr. Speaker, the last administration borrowed funds locally in the Bahamas, not from the Inter-American Development Bank, and was able, at a very quick pace, expeditiously, and was able to respond, I believe, more expeditiously than we've seen today. We're now going into a second month, well into a second month, and there is no evidence of the roads, the hospitals, the schools. In fact, with the Bahamas Union of Teachers, which is complaining about the status. There's an editorial of the Tribune in the Guardian today complaining about this, Mr. Speaker. So the member is misrepresenting the position. That is not, Mr. Speaker, I'm just saying the member is misrepresenting the position of a member who's not here as to his affiliation and affection for his constituents. And the position was well thought out. It had nothing to do with wanting to wait, etc. We're waiting anyhow with the Inter-American Development Bank. We don't see these things that the Prime Minister is speaking about.
Mr. Speaker, I put it in some simple language so that the average man can understand the interpretation. They were placed, and I'm speaking to the constituents, I'm speaking to Bahamas. You wanted to build a house, and a bank came and said to you, we're going to allow you access to $50 million in case any damage happened to your house. You can start as quickly as possible. This money is available for you. Or, if anything should happen, this money not there, you then have to go to look for money, to Royal, to all the various different places. So they can interpret themselves whether they think having the money available to repair versus going into the market and competing with everyone, which is best. They can interpret that themselves. Mr. Speaker, I would only say that they are so short-sighted, blinded by their own desperation, that they opposed what was good for the Bahamian people. And that was good for the Bahamian people. That was, as I go through this process, my debate, everything would become even more clear. And I would hope that we're not like popcorn all day, so that we can get through. I'm saying we. I did not say you. Mr. Speaker, I did not speak to the member of Angliston. When I said we, I was especially referencing myself because my shoes off, I'm comfortable standing. I don't want to be sitting all day, up and down, like quack, snapple, pop.
Honorable member, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Angleton on a point of order.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, the Parliament is a serious place, and the country is in a serious place. And I hear the member talking about popping up. Every member on this side will take a position if it is found to be just in the interest of the people. Now, the Prime Minister could call it portal swap, or however he wants to describe it, which is trivializing the role of the opposition in this Parliament and the role of parliamentarians. And I just want to remind all of us we are in serious times. And again, Mr. Speaker, the member again suggested that that we made a decision to not support that, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member, you've already made that point.
Well, the Prime Minister repeated it, and that's why I'm coming back to it, Mr. Speaker.
But honorable member,
Yeah.
on a point of order, you should state specifically what the point is.
Yes.
The infringement of the rules.
Yes.
And I'm still waiting to hear that. On the second point of order, what is the infringement?
I think that the member is seeking to cast negative aspersions on another member.
This particular point of order I'm speaking about.
Yes, this particular one, when the member says that he doesn't want couple, whatever how he described it, when the members take points of order or objections in the Parliament, it is a demeaning expression of what is legitimate positions taken by the opposition. Speaker? And so I'm just reminding all of us we're in a serious forum, Speaker. That's all.
Oh, thank you very much.
You never answered.
I feel so comfortable standing, much better than sitting. Mr. Speaker, I wish to provide an update as to how these funds, the $100 million that I speak about, how these funds will be allocated to rebuild the lives and communities of those devastated by Hurricane Dorian. The funds will be utilized as follows, Mr. Speaker. The funds that we had the credit line for. $30 million for electrical restoration and infrastructure. And you said no. $15 million for water restoration and reconstruction. And again, you said no. $30 million for social assistance payment and support. And again, the answer was no. $15 million for cleanup. It was no again. And $1 million for evacuation and shelter costs. And $9 million for other costs to be determined. Mr. Speaker, when I spoke last week, I said to the member that the exigency order would be extended to the 2nd of December. 2nd of December. Then we had a cabinet meeting this morning. I'm happy to announce that the exigency order would be extended to the end of December. Mr. Speaker, I hope that the members would find fit to support this bill, though they've said no, they won't. But I want the public to know some of what is in this bill that the members are voting against. But I would hope that they would change their mind. This bill, this bill gives, this bill gives the Prime Minister the authority to waive certain taxes. Remember, Mr. Speaker, that the exigency stops the end of December. The bill can carry on so that more taxes could be, the relaxation of taxes can be carried on so that individuals would have extra time to rebuild their communities and rebuild their homes. It gives the Prime Minister the authority to remove VAT of certain items. And yes, Mr. Speaker, areas like Abaco, Grand Bahama, the Keys, Oaktown, Manawaki, Wynn, Turkey, all of those areas were devastated. Electricity or power has been off. Now, as a result, individuals have been using generators. The high cost of diesel, inclusive of VAT, which become even more expensive than power by BPL itself. And this bill allows the Prime Minister to remove VAT of fuel, diesel, for those individuals affected, so as to decrease their cost and improve their quality of life and allow them to rebuild as quickly as possible. So we will remove the VAT of fuel during this particular time so that those individuals would receive some relief. But you would vote against that. I would hope you change your mind. Then, Mr. Speaker, we know that engine parts for boats, many of those areas, they depend on boating. And a lot of the boats would have been destroyed or damaged. And yes, they could bring boats in duty-free. However, engine parts carry additional costs with VAT. And what was so amazing to me, Mr. Speaker, and somewhat hurting, was as I visited Manawaki, there were two young individuals who had just started their business in 2016. Two young men, Grant Albury and Lyle Sawyer. In 2016, they commenced a ferry business. They were able to build their fleet to 9. 4 were completely destroyed, and others would have experienced severe boat damage. They would have used all of their monies, Mr. Speaker, to establish this business. And it's the government responsibility to assist them as much as possible. But this bill allows both Lyle and Grant, young entrepreneurs, the opportunity to purchase new fleet, and we can remove the VAT of their new engines or rebuilt engines, which would require payment of VAT at this time, but the bill would relieve them of that stress and that pressure. And we intend to help both Lyle and Grant so that they can continue to grow their business. But you want to vote no. I hope you change your mind because they're listening. I hope you change your mind. They are young people. What are you telling young entrepreneurs? No.
The chair recognizes Honorable Member Ibarra. The chair recognizes Honorable Member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador.
Mr. Speaker, what we in the opposition, what we are telling the young entrepreneurs is that this is a charade by the Prime Minister, that what the relief he's now speaking to are now available by a stroke of a pen for him. That's what we're saying, Mr. Speaker. That's the message we're saying.
The Speaker, as I've said, the exigency order terminates the 31st of December. With this would allow, Mr. Speaker, let me go through it so that you would hear. A rebate, business license fees, license. A waiver, refund or reduction of value-added tax or zero rating on the importation of goods specified therein. Exemption of any excise tax payable on the importation of goods specified therein. Exemption of any tariff or tax of any kind on the importation of goods specified therein. And a waiver of any other fee, levy, tax, or duty payable under any other law. Speaker,
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and St. Salvador on a point of order.
Speaker, the Prime Minister quite rightly started off by pointing out that the exigency order expires, and now we're having this bill. What I'm pointing out is that the same way, all they need to do is prepare another exigency order or extend that exigency order to give the same relief that you are now attempting to say you're codifying. That's the point, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member.
And Mr. Speaker,
Honorable member.
I point out that the law has
Honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and St. Salvador. You're on a point of order, but that is not a point of order that you're raising. That is. He didn't yield. You rise on a point of order, so automatically you should take a seat. The chair recognizes you on a point of order.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
But you're not giving a point of order, you're just giving a disagreement.
All right, Mr. Speaker.
What you did is just gave a difference in opinion of what the member said.
No, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what I attempted...
What rule is being infringed?
Might I point out...
What rule is being infringed?
He's misrepresenting...
What rule
what we say.
is being infringed?
Right, misleading the Parliament is what we said, Mr. Speaker.
He made no reference to what you said.
No, but by...
He simply...
inference, Mr. Speaker, what I said...
that is a matter of opinion. This is what I'm saying. That is not a point of order.
In my contribution, Mr. Speaker, I said...
Honorable member.
Mr. Speaker, you want me to explain? Why you want me to point to the rule? The rule is if he misrepresents something that I may have said during my contribution, I have the right to stand up and correct it.
Not on a point of order.
What I do it on?
That is a different rule.
What rule I do it on?
You do it on rule 33.7, not rule 33.16, 17, or 18. See,
but there's a rule for me to do it, Mr. Speaker.
But yes, and all I'm saying to you, honorable member.
I mean, point it out to me, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member.
I'm saying to you that he misrepresented.
Honorable member.
To say, and I want to point out, Mr. Speaker. Yes.
Something that we put forward. Sit down here.
I have.
Your point
I am trying to be as fair as I possibly can.
Just be as
but honorable member, honorable member, honorable member, the point I'm simply making to you, and I would like for all members, you can have your seat. Yes. Honorable member, the point I'm making is exactly to dissuade you from doing what you're doing. I will see, and I will speak. The point I'm making is, whenever the chair is engaged in terms of the rules with respect to a point of order or a member wishing to give explanation to any issue raised in his speech, while the chair is speaking, you do not continue to speak, pretend as if you don't hear the chair, and engage the chair in a discourse. You do not do that. So, F. That is the rule I cited to you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So that's
That is the rule I'm saying
to which I would agree.
you rise on a point of order.
Yeah, I say
So, which was improper.
why, Mr. Speaker?
Because it wasn't a point of order. That rule does not refer.
The Speaker, read 27, what 27 says, the Speaker. 27 says a member in the following circumstances only interrupt another member who is speaking. So I'm interrupting this member for the reason that is described at 27F. You quite rightly pointed it out. You quite rightly pointed it out. So that's what I was doing, Mr. Speaker. Interrupting him because he was misrepresenting what I had to say previously.
Yeah, criminal lawyer, you know. Anyhow, Mr. Speaker, I point out all the benefits that we'll be extending to the Abacos, Keys, and Grand Bahama, so that they can get the economy going as quickly as possible. And Mr. Speaker, we recognize that a lot of stores would have lost inventory, and we're discussing that matter. We're discussing. But I gave a breakdown, Mr. Speaker, of how the $100 million would be spent. And I thank God that our administration pushed ahead with the credit facility, just as we are pushing ahead with the new legislation before us here today. If we had listened to the PLP, this vital and critical $100 million loan facility would not have been readily available. They oppose for opposing sake, even when it makes them look ridiculous as driving. Now listen so you can get up. They oppose for opposing sake, even when it makes them look ridiculous as driving a truck through a flooded area, pushing more flood water into people's homes. You want a point of order? The IDB loan, Mr. Speaker, the IDB loan facility has rigorous and strong accountability mechanisms. Unlike some loans in the past from commercial banks, the hurricane funds ended up in all kinds of funny and unintended places. This administration will account for how and where these hurricane recovery and reconstruction funds will be spent. And Mr. Speaker, I noted during the ceremony for the loan signing for the $100 million loan, recent natural disasters and extreme weather conditions around the world and in the Bahamas indicate that effects of global warming are increasing. Further went on, I note reports completed by the UN ECLAC on the impact of hurricanes Joaquin, Matthew, and Irma to the Bahamas. The direct damage, losses, and additional costs were approximately $828 million. I also stated at that time, we must maximize our ability to recover as quickly as possible in order to quickly get our communities and our economy back on track following such catastrophic events. A key part of any readiness plan is to have access to resources as quickly as possible to speed up response and recovery efforts. The CCL is a line of credit that is on standby in the event that we are hit by a hurricane and require additional funds to recover. And by design and by government policy, these funds can only be accessed in response to natural disasters. And any prudent government would do what we are doing, that is, to have the ability to access funding if and when needed. And this approach is consistent with developing an effective financial strategy to deal with disaster preparedness. Mr. Speaker, it is most fortunate that we put this facility in place in April. Unlike past hurricanes, the Bahamas is able to quickly draw on this $100 million facility because of the foresight of this administration. And this was an example of foresight and proper planning. How can someone fix their mouth to talk about planning when they voted against a plan to have a $100 million credit facility in place in the event of a major natural disaster? So I asked the question, and the Bahamian public can answer, is that not planning? But yet they said we had no plan. They mock, Mr. Speaker, and they repudiate their own empty rhetoric by their failure to have supported this loan facility. Mr. Speaker, Hurricane Dorian is a generational tragedy that has changed the Bahamas forever. The storm laid waste to much of Abaco, the Abaco Keys, and parts of Grand Bahama. In the lifetime of Bahamians, we had not seen maximum sustained winds of 185 miles per hour and gusts as high as 220 miles per hour, accompanied by storm surge in excess of 20 feet and tornadoes. Mr. Speaker, while in Manawa Key, I spoke to several of the young people there who represent the future. It was interesting. One of the young men who stayed during the hurricane said to me that in Manawa Key, he has a gauge that can monitor the wind velocity. And when the storm first entered their shores, his monitor was showing that the wind velocity was as high as 250 miles per hour. And that was just the beginning of the storm. And when he clocked 250, he only said to his family, oh my, we are really in for something. 250 miles per hour was clocked by this young man, Speaker. Where homes and businesses once were, in some places there's only debris. And Mr. Speaker, just to show you the magnitude of this storm, there was a boat called the Grasshopper. That boat was owned by Keith Albury. The Grasshopper was docked in the marina at Manawa Key. But 7 to 10 days later, the Grasshopper was discovered off the Georgia coast. The Grasshopper, 7 to 10 days later, was moved from Manawa Key and was discovered off the coast of Georgia. So, Mr. Speaker, that gives you some idea of what we were dealing with. When we looked at some places where homes were, there's now nothing. The winds and the sea took everything away. Everything. Dorian's unrelenting ferocity claimed many lives, and we continue to mourn for those who have passed away. We pray for the families left behind, enduring unimaginable grief. Mr. Speaker, during and after the storm, there were great acts of courage and heroism. Lives were saved by Bahamian patriots who acted unafraid of the consequences to their safety. Defense force and police officers, nurses, doctors, family island administrators, and other public officers and private citizens were on the front line saving lives. And these Bahamian heroes, who I commended on National Heroes Day, put their lives at risk in the service of others. In many instances, they did not know the people whom they helped. They only knew that individuals were in danger and needed assistance, and they put their own personal lives in danger to help save others. They lived up to the highest virtues of faith and of citizenship, assisting neighbors and strangers so desperately in need. And the Speaker, we must never forget these Bahamian heroes who sacrificed to rescue, to feed, and to provide shelter for those who were devastated by nature's fury. This courage gives hope to all of us during this difficult time. And no matter how bad the circumstance, with bravery, tenacity, hard work, courage, and love, we can and we will overcome. Mr. Speaker, we have highlighted some of the stories of these Bahamian heroes on the Office of the Prime Minister's Facebook page, and I encourage Bahamians to visit the page. These profiles were also featured on ZNS. But Mr. Speaker, allow me to repeat what I said during my press conference yesterday morning. I am never going to stop thanking the many public officers and members of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, members of the Royal Bahamas Police Force, for all the hard work and good work they are doing in very difficult circumstances. The Defense Force has established a container city which is serving as its operations base and as part of the command and control structure needed to ensure law and order. The base of operations is located in Dundas Town and prepares 700 meals per day for Defense Force personnel, police force officers, and other government workers. They have set up an RO plant capable of producing 1,000 gallons of water per day. And there's also a clinic and living quarters for officers. Mr. Speaker, as Prime Minister, the safety and security of the Bahamian people are among my most important duties. Dorian's impact on Abaco and Grand Bahama means we can no longer maintain the status quo as to how we prepare for and respond to storms. We must improve both in order to save lives in the future. The legislation before us is part of my government's disaster preparedness and response reforms, as are the creation of the Ministry of Disaster Preparedness, Management and Reconstruction, and the foreshadowed restructuring of the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA. This bill, Mr. Speaker, seeks to amend the Act to empower the Prime Minister to make certain orders. And these orders cover a range of activities or prohibitions for the protection of people in stated areas. They include evacuation orders, curfews, and restrictions of movement in certain places for a period of time. Provisions in this bill, Mr. Speaker, also exist for orders for tax waivers and exemptions regarding the relief of recovery phases after disasters. And again, I want to remind those homeowners, residents especially, the keys that the government recognize the cost to you utilizing generators in the absence of power supply, and the government would remove VAT of diesel and the fuel you purchase for your generators during the government is also considering how we can assist with restocking your supplies that would have been lost, a one-shot deal that would have been lost during these trying times. And the duties for building supplies, materials, equipment will be removed so that you can build as quickly as possible. We will do all we can to help jumpstart the economy and help create jobs. Mr. Speaker, there was a organization there in Manawaki, non-government organization, helping with the cleaning up of Manawaki. Samaritan Purse. And Samaritan Purse is doing an excellent job. These agencies they are assisting with cleaning the Keys and all the entire Bahamas. But I was impressed with what they were doing in Manawaki, because we must do everything possible to get the Keys functional, because the Keys represent a great component of our economy and job employment for the mainland, Abaco. Mr. Speaker, just so that many would understand what they've been doing, they have all the various different heavy equipments in, and they are cleaning the Keys. They are also placing debris on barges so that they can be transported to the mainland and placed in the appropriate facilities that are provided on the mainland. We are ensuring that we do not run into the problem that the PLT or the former government ran into, where they move materials from point A to point B only to recognize that they finally wanted to point D. And therefore, rather than paying to move from A to D, they pay moving materials A to B, B to C, C to D, and C to F. But we are moving one shot, A to F, and cut all the middle out. Mr. Speaker, what they're doing is an excellent job at cleaning, but what's most important, the organization, where the residents, and that is why it's so important for the authority that we spoke about. The authority would have such capability. The residents had contracted structural engineers, where the structural engineers would have assessed the various homes and made determination professionally whether these homes should be abolished or they were repairable. And the homes were marked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then they would review the files and make determination that home number 5 was recommended to be abolished. They would then check the records, and home number 5 is owned by John Brown. Then John Brown, the insurance, and Samaritan Purse would have met at the facility and agreed that such facility is beyond repair and should be removed. They would then demolish the home and cart off the material that cannot be utilized there. And those materials that could be utilized would have been placed in high advanced mulching machines so that materials could be mulched, and blocks or stones placed in machines so that the powder and whatever could be used. And certain blocks are made out of the old bits. That is what is happening, Mr. Speaker. That is organization. And that's what would be done in this entire cleanup process, so that determinations can be made as to whether a building is repairable or not. And I would hope, Mr. Speaker, as we debate the authority bill, the members would see the value of the authority having to make such quick and rapid decisions so that we can get the economies rocking and rolling. Oh, Christie recommended? It goes back to shoulda, woulda, and coulda, huh?
Recommended.
Couple. Oh, okay. Oh, so y'all will support it? Real, Mr. Christie, your team said you were in my head, you knew what we were saying, and you brought it forth. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Speaker, these orders, so obviously there'll be no objection there. There'll be no objection. These orders cover a range of activities or prohibitions for the protection of people in the stated areas. They include evacuation orders, curfews, and restrictions of movement. And provisions also exist for orders for tax waivers and exemptions regarding the relief of recovery phases after disaster. But opposition said they would oppose these orders. But I hope they would change their mind. There are some reservations about these amendments. But Mr. Speaker, you know, some people just fear change. However, we must press forward and begin the process to reform disaster preparedness and response in our country. The Bahamian people elected the FNM government to govern and to make fundamental changes in order to modernize and to transform our country for the better. As difficult as change often is, we must govern in the best interest of current and future generations. We must lead, and lead we will. Mr. Speaker, the Free National Movement has an abiding and enduring respect for civil liberties and freedoms. The value of freedom is at the core of our identity as a political party. After all, we are named for freedom. Because of our founders. I ain't reached Andres yet. Now, I would advise Andres to be quiet. Because I remembered listening, South Andres, I remembered listening to the member from St. Anne's. And the member from St. Anne's, now I'm not saying we necessarily agreed, but the member for St. Anne's said, we're going after Angliston, we're going after Exuma, we're going after Cat Island, but we're going to leave Andres.
Now that's South Andres.
Oh, no.
Now, South Andres.
You just put him in order. So they do speak it.
Anyhow, Mr. Speaker, because of our founders. But I didn't say we agreed with them. Well, I did not say. I did not say. Huh? What I can say, we won't go hard after Engliston, but Engliston will come to us. Mr. Speaker, because of our founders and other freedom fighters, democracy was secured, then deepened and broadened. Indeed, it is the Free National Movement that liberated the broadcast media from state control. It is the Free National Movement that sought to advance fundamental rights and freedom for women. Mr. Speaker, you know, I always hear opposition members say, Free National Movement are not for women or different aspects. But when I look at just the office of the Prime Minister, the office of the Prime Minister, Permanent Secretary, the female, just now we have acting one at this particular time. Investment Authority Director, a female. And I look at delivery unit, head of delivery unit, a female. When I look at the communications director, a female. When I look at the head of Over the Hill project, a female. When I look at the modernization unit, a female. I'm a lone soldier. But yet they say we anti. Anyhow, Mr. Speaker, freedom comes with corresponding responsibilities and obligations. Every society must balance freedom and liberty with order and the duty to save and to protect human life. Mr. Speaker, when storms come and there is a significant threat to life, we want Bahamians to move away from dangerous areas and to seek shelter in safer places. This is the compelling, clear, and simple purpose of the evacuation orders. Evacuation orders are commonplace around the world in times of natural disasters. They make sense. Such orders save lives. To stay on the coast, to remain in low-lying areas, and to remain in poorly constructed dwelling places could lead to unnecessary deaths. Mr. Speaker, it is essential that we have all within our boundaries live in proper, safe accommodation. That is the government's responsibility to ensure the safety of its people and all within its domain. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, it is mandatory that we remove all shanty towns within our territory. They break our laws, they are unsafe, they are unhealthy, they are health risk, and they are unhygienic. And therefore, I will ask the Attorney General to go return the court to ask that the injunction be lifted. Essential, Mr. Speaker, that we save lives. With these orders, Mr. Speaker, we want Bahamians and residents to know that a life-threatening event is possible
and you should move to preserve life and to stay alive. In the aftermath of Dorian, some unscrupulous individuals used the chaos as a time to steal. In Abaco, there have been security concerns. We will ensure law and order, not only in Abaco, but throughout our Bahamas. We have increased the police and defense force deployment there to address these concerns. It is also essential to have additional security tools at the government's disposal if required. Curfews and temporary restrictions on movement in the aftermath of disasters are just that. And such curfews, Mr. Speaker, are commonplace across the world in the aftermath of natural disasters. It is shocking that anyone interested in protecting and saving human life would be opposed to such temporary measures. Mr. Speaker, by profession, I am a doctor. By profession, I am an obstetrician gynecologist. I am accustomed to delivering and bringing life forth. I am accustomed to protecting life. That's my training. That's what I know to do. That's what this bill is attempting to do. How can an opposition oppose the protection of life? How can? Now this is I didn't hear you. I didn't hear you. I didn't hear you. I didn't hear you. How can an opposition, Mr. Speaker, how can they oppose improving the quality of life? How can they oppose jump-starting lives and jump-starting the economy? How can they oppose helping our family islands, helping Abaco, the Keys, Grand Bahama, helping the young men that I spoke about earlier, young Aubrey in Manawa Key, and young Sawyer, to restart their businesses? How can you oppose that? I ask, Mr. Speaker, that the opposition rethink their position. This is something our country knows well. After the ravages of the corrupt drug era of 70s and 80s, from which we are still recovering, the criminal culture of corruption by government officials of that era continued to scar our nation. The government of the Bahamas, Mr. Speaker, needs to have the necessary lawful powers at its disposal to maintain or restore order when faced with natural disasters. And Mr. Speaker, it is important for me to re-emphasize to the House and the Bahamian people that the government is leading an international response to Dorian. I want to repeat that. The government is leading an international response to Dorian. Let me emphasize that the central government is deploying hundreds of government personnel from every ministry and major agencies on the ground to coordinate and to help with recovery and reconstruction. The government, Mr. Speaker, has had to reestablish the workings and the instruments of government on the ground. This is the largest deployment of government personnel in the history of the country in the aftermath of a natural disaster. Mr. Speaker, in its development, path, and ferocity, Hurricane Dorian will be something scientists study for years to come. I have spoken to many UN level, other agencies, and international arena who would have worked in war-torn areas, crime-infested areas to rehabilitate those areas, and they all said the same thing. They have never, ever seen anything like this. Mr. Speaker, I can only say that in order to have an understanding of what you may see in Abaco, many have described it as if an atomic bomb had come through. Walls were thrown down and made into powder. Roofs are moved from one area and thrown onto homes in another area. Containers are thrown from docks way inland, and so have boats. Mr. Speaker, many would have seen pictures and tried to describe what has occurred as a result of pictures. I would advise every Bahamian, as many as possible in this country, and every journalist in this country to visit Abaco so that you can see for yourself and have a better understanding of what has taken place. History is being written every day. Many are coming here to the Bahamas, studying how to deal with this aftermath. History will be recorded, and we will be utilized as example, because storms are becoming stronger and more ferocious than they are today. We never thought that we would see storms beyond 140 miles per hour. But the young man in Manawaki had recorded wind velocity 250 miles per hour. The way we lived yesterday must change. We are in a new storm era, and our island and our countries are under threat 6 months out of every year. So, Mr. Speaker, again, I would urge every Bahamian to visualize themselves, visit, so that they can see what challenges we face moving ahead. But I can assure them that whatever challenges there are, we will overcome. The destruction caused by Dorian, Mr. Speaker, is unprecedented in our modern history. I cannot describe what you will see, or I cannot describe the aftermath of Dorian in the Abacos, the Keys, and East End, Grand Bahama. I think it's essential for Bahamians and every member of Parliament to visualize for themselves. Then they would see what challenges the government and the people of the Bahamas face. The government of the Bahamas, Mr. Speaker, invited the international community to assist with the search, rescue, recovery, and restoration phases of this disaster response. The government's efforts are in conjunction with the extraordinary efforts by the local private sector, churches, NGOs, and individual Bahamians. The Bahamas is a small island developing country, and Dorian's impact was so significant that no small country of our size could do it alone. We recognized that we could not do it alone. We knew what was coming, and that was why we continuously warned our people to take the necessary precautions, move to high ground. We warned our people that those in Abaco should move to the south. And Mr. Speaker, I can say that the south are being spared. The storm did not touch the south. I have a home in South Abaco, and not one leaf was blown off the tree. You want me to expand? Huh? You want me to expand? No. Don't listen to gossip. Don't listen to gossip. Don't listen to gossip. Don't listen to gossip. Right? I had people living with me in my home. My house? Anyhow, Mr. Speaker, I am focused. I am not going to entertain nonsense here today.
Why just rubbing off on you?
Mr. Speaker, we recognized that we could not do it alone, and that was why we sought help. That was why we sought help. And some say we did not respond quick enough, but I want to remind them again so that everybody would remember. The Americans, the Coast Guard, landed their helicopter with all the necessary supplies, stationed in Andres. And again, and others were stationed in Exuma. So that once the hurricane left and the all clear, or even before, they could have been dispatched as quickly as possible to the affected area. And that they did, thus saving lives and moving people out as quickly as possible to the health facilities here in New Providence. And the member said that that was not fast enough. But I would repeat what I said, and that still holds. The only way we could have gotten there faster than the U.S. Coast Guard had gotten to Abaco was if technology had advanced and we said, beam me up, Scotty. No other way could we have gotten faster, only through Star Trek. Mr. Speaker, recognizing that we could not do it alone, we had contacted the world, an international body, ensuring that all the necessary NGOs and assistance were available for us. And we are thankful for all the international agencies that are assisting us, because we need them to help build our country. And Mr. Speaker, if you look at first world countries, large countries, when they are affected, or if they were affected with such disaster, they too would have needed assistance. And the Bahamas is thankful and grateful for all the assistance we are receiving today. The government, Mr. Speaker, is coordinating with these international partners to ensure that help is distributed across the disaster zones. When one sees teams from the government or other countries or other international groups, it is part of the overall response and recovery effort by our government. And Mr. Speaker, I continue to hope that the opposition will try to work in good faith to bring about the changes needed to help modernize and to transform the Bahamas, including how we respond to hurricanes. And as I previously noted, it is sad that the PLP seem intent on opposing for the sake of opposing. If our administration suggests something, they are usually against it. If we say we are going right, they will oppose it to move left. If we say the world is round, they will say it is flat. And if we say Mars is up, they will say no, Mars is down. When I read the newspapers, Mr. Speaker, all I regularly see are statements filled with vitriol and anger from the leader of the opposition and his colleagues. No matter how reasonable our policy is to help Bahamians, they are critics of it, as they were with the IDB loan facility. Mr. Speaker, there will be a marked difference as to how we conduct ourselves during this relief effort as compared to them when they were in office during storms. In this hurricane relief effort, there will be accountability. Mr. Speaker, I just want to give an update as to there are many Bahamians who believe that we are collecting billions and billions of dollars. That is not true. We will give an update, but I want to point out that as of today, we would have received donations to the tune of $7,443,938.64. Not the hundreds of millions of dollars that people believe. Mr. Speaker, the donations breakdown are as follows. Corporate, $2,714,870.80. Private, $1,079,965.65. Foreign government, $1,951,500. Government local, $503,078.85. Intergovernmental, $393,186.94. NGOs, $221,378.01. And multilateral organizations, $400,000. NPOs, $179,958.39, which makes it a total donation of $7,443,938.64, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just to give an idea of the expenditure, but we will keep the Bahamian people updated as to how much money we had collected and how it is spent. But just to give an idea of the expenditure, RVs, Mr. Speaker, inclusive of fixed bank charges, $1,934,359.35. Expenditure, mobilization on dome structures, $2,750,000 $100,000. Mr. Speaker, be assured that this government will give updates of monies received so that individuals would not feel that we are misappropriating the funds. We will account and report to this Parliament as to every cent we received and how every cent was spent. So, Mr. Speaker, we will account for the donations we receive. We will account for the money we spend, and we will report to the Bahamian people on this process as it develops. We believe, Mr. Speaker, a government should be able to account for the money spent in a hurricane relief effort. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamian people, and look and listen to me very carefully, the Bahamian people know you very well. They know the other side, and I'm speaking for front bench, not back bench. The people overwhelmingly rejected them because of the state of ruin in which they left the country. They are still not trusted to act in the best interest of the Bahamian people. So, Saul Andres, the offer still holds. The PLP, the PLP has never fully apologized for its terrible and disgraceful record last time, which led the country down the path of corruption, financial downgrades, and the wasteful and reckless spending of the people's money. Mr. Speaker, when I became leader of the Free National Movement, I pledged that I would spend my time advancing the interests of regular Bahamians. I came from the people, regular Bahamian, Baytown boy. Me and you, South Andres. I know the struggle. I know the struggle, Mr. Speaker, of not having much. I know what it is like. I know what it is like to be looked down upon by those who have plenty and more than enough. And my mission, Mr. Speaker, is to help and to lift up those Bahamians who have been long neglected. That is why this government brought forward the inner city tax incentive to help spur growth in places forgotten by the other side. And that is why we brought forward the Universal Preschool Initiative to give more children a chance and a good start in life. That is why, Mr. Speaker, we have aggressively pursued new investments to cause jobs to be available for Bahamians to provide for themselves. And under my government watch, billions of dollars worth of investment has come to the Bahamas, including the development of a new cruise port for downtown Nassau. The economy returned to consistent and steady growth. Dorian is a challenge to our economic well-being, but the Bahamian people can be assured that they have in place a government concerned about continued growth and prosperity, along with restoration of what was destroyed. Mr. Speaker, my government is fully engaged in meeting the challenge of this historic moment. The people elected us to govern. They elected us to government 2 years ago because they knew they could trust us more than the party on the other side. We will continue our program of economic growth and job creation. We will rebuild and restore Abaco and Grand Bahama with God's grace and the hard work of Bahamian people. Speaker, very soon, I intend to travel to all the family islands and all the various different constituencies to explain to them where we are today, what Dorian has done to us, and how we plan on overcoming that challenge. They will know, Mr. Speaker, exactly how much money we would have collected in terms of donation and how that money is being spent, so that the opposition would not have an opportunity to feed them with misinformation about us misspending them. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, so, Mr. Speaker, I and a team will visit all the various family islands to explain the future outlook for them. That includes Cat Island, Rum Key, and San Salvador, Exuma, and the Ragged Island, Angliston. I said town, and many others. Mr. Speaker, there's a matter I just want to briefly address while on my feet. There are individuals concerned about volunteers being turned away and having immigration challenges. I want to say that volunteers who are attached to international agencies will not experience any challenges as they are a part of international agencies, and they will be accommodated very quickly and rapidly. But we must be very careful that there can be unscrupulous individuals who would state that there are volunteers coming in to help rebuild, and they may not necessarily be volunteers. But that matter will be addressed at the appropriate time by the minister with responsibility for immigration, as he and his team are looking at that matter to ensure that volunteers can enter our shores unobstructed and help to rebuild. But those who are coming with ulterior motive, we would be able to recognize and deal with it appropriately. But yes, Travis, you are on the list to travel throughout the family islands.
Travis on the list.
We are. But Mr. Speaker, I only want to conclude that I would hope the opposition would support this amendment, recognizing that these changes are to improve the quality of life of Bahamian people and to save lives and to provide all the necessary concessions and tax relief so as to get the economies of those affected areas mobilized and running as quickly as possible, and to get those Bahamians who may have lost their jobs as a result of Dorian re-employed as quickly as possible. That is our role, that is our objective, and I would hope that the opposition see the same to vote differently would send a bad message to the Bahamian people. May God continue to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, honorable members. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Anglican.
Thank you, Speaker. I didn't want to interrupt the member because, he was nearing the end. But I think he may have given an impression, an erroneous impression that somehow in prior hurricanes under prior administrations, and in particular the Progressive Liberal Party, that funds were received by international donors and local donors, and that somehow there was no accountability. You didn't say, okay, because we had strict accountability for hurricane funds. I want to make sure that that impression was not given. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Honorable member, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I just wondered, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister, extensive, quite apart from the broadside on the party opposite, spoke extensively about the by the contingency loan that was passed by resolution. I know the resolution was laid last December. I can't remember what date it was passed, but it was laid last December. But I wonder whether he would lay the loan contract on the table, the executed and the conditions and the special conditions and general conditions. No, I don't. No, I don't. That's why it wasn't here before. It was not here before. It was not here before. And that's why we were not going to be voting for pig in the bag. We now wish, now that you're engaging the IDB bank, we did, and you did not lay it. We did ask for it. And one of the reasons why we did not support it is that we were not familiar with what the special conditions would have been. We were not familiar with what the general conditions were. We did not have the Annex 1 to the document. It was not here. And so we did not know what we were entering into. And we asked for it then and it was not done. So we now ask, now that it's being triggered, Mr. Speaker, we ask now that they be laid. So the Bahamian people...
Honorable member, just for the record,
yes,
what specifically are you asking for?
Specifically, Mr. Speaker, the signed agreement between the government and the Inter-American Development Bank. One.
And that document that you're reading from? What
this
is that?
document is the draft. It's the draft loan contract with the special conditions that was attached to the draft, which was attached to the resolution passed by this House. Now, that document refers to other documents and an annexure that were not attached. We only asked today, having so extensively discussed it, if he could lay those documents on the table. The executed one.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Kalani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As we are a transparent, accountable, and honest government, and you won't have the opportunity to review the files of government, we would lay it for you. Okay?
Thank you.
Saying those documents.
Thank you, honorable members.
Now, can I take on deep and cook?
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a second time and committed. A bill for an act to amend the Disaster Preparedness and Response Act to provide for evacuation, disaster and relief orders to be made by the Prime Minister and for connected purposes. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Order that the bill be read for a second time in committee.
A bill for an act to amend the Disaster Preparedness and Response Act to provide for evacuation, disaster, and relief orders to be made by the Prime Minister and for connected purposes.
Further second reading and committal of bills. The chair recognizes the honourable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, at this point in time in the agenda of the House, we will suspend until tomorrow, Wednesday, at 10 a.m., at which point in time, Mr. Speaker, the House will engage in a debate on Bill number 110, which is an act to provide for the exemption of payment of fees to replace government-issued documents that were damaged or lost by persons who on the 1st of September 2019 reside in any of the islands impacted by Hurricane Doreen. And so, Mr. Speaker, I do move that the House suspends until Wednesday, tomorrow, at 10 a.m., the 23rd of October 2019.
I second that, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, it has been moved and seconded that the business of this House do suspend until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, Wednesday, the 23rd of October, 2019. As many as are in favour will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. It is ordered that the business of this House stand suspended until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, Wednesday, the 23rd of October, 2019.